have a couple of announcements for y'all. So we've sent out a couple emails with the Sardis poll. The cleanup at Sardis is April 12th. If you would please go on and either say yes or no if you're coming. That way we can get a good head count for food.
What do we have?
Really great. What?
What are we having?
We're having barbecue.
Taylor Grocery.
Taylor Grocery. We're having barbecue mac and cheese. AKA height.
Ice cream, the ice cream cart from Taylor Groceries.
Yeah, I'll bring it to your house.
Thank you. All right, I can live with that.
And then, so officer applications are on Gen now. They are due April 26th. If you want to be more involved in Beta Alpha Psi, I highly encourage it. It's not like an overwhelming commitment. It's a lot of fun. So apply for an officer position. And then next Tuesday, April 9th, we have Billy come to speak to us at 6 o'clock. And we will be meeting in Lamar 126. Okay, so these are our panelists today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and if y'all will tell us your name, obviously, the degrees and schools in which you got them from, and then how long you've been here.
Right.
I think it might be also helpful to hear your professional experience.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Let's get started.
Okay, so
No, you're fine. You can just sit. Yeah.
I'm Tina Owens. I am in my first year of the PhD program here at Ole Miss. I got both my bachelor's and master's in accounting at Valdosta State University in Georgia. And I worked, after I graduated, I worked for 2 years in a very small public tax firm, doing taxes and doing audit in the fall for governmental entities.
I'm Jeremy Griffin. My bachelor's degree is from here at Ole Miss. My master's degree is from Notre Dame, and my PhD is from the University of Georgia. I am in my 4th year of my second appointment at the faculty here. The first time I was an adjunct, and prior to coming back to Ole Miss, I was on faculty at Notre Dame for 5 years, and before I got my doctorate, I was an auditor with Deloitte for a couple of years, and I was plant accounting manager for the Borg Warner plant in Water Valley.
I'm Kendall Boland. I got my bachelor's degree in banking and finance here at Ole Miss, and then saw the light and got a master's degree in accounting, or saw the job prospects and then a master's degree in accounting. After I got my master's degree, I worked for 4 years for EY in Memphis as an auditor. I then went to the University of Texas at Austin for a PhD, and I've been back here on faculty for almost 11 years.
I'm Rachna Prakash. I have a PhD from Emory University. I've been here at Ole Miss for 6 years now. I teach governmental, and that's all that I teach. So I have a PhD from Emory. I have an MBA from University of Rochester and an MS from MIT. Before that, I have my undergrad from India. I'm also a chartered accountant from India, which is like a CPA here. So I'm a CPA licensed in the state of Mississippi. And
Chartered stuff does not count.
apparently, well, we are the originals, just so you know. So I worked for KPMG in India, and here I worked on Wall Street for a few years, and that's it.
Okay, so our first, just to preface this has got to get a run like the intern panel did, so if y'all have any questions at any point, just like raise your hand. If I don't see you, yell and see, and then I'll call on you and you can ask questions. I highly encourage it. I do have questions, but I would rather y'all know what you want to know from them instead of what I want to know from them. So, any beginning questions? Okay. So our first question is, what incentivized you guys to move from the private sector or public accounting into academia? Y'all can run down the line or popcorn, it doesn't matter.
I'll tell you why. So I was working on Wall Street, hated it. Hated the people I worked with more than anything else. No, it's true, and I didn't particularly care for the work I was doing. I was doing some fairly unusual up. So I was working with one of the largest investment banks, Solomon Smith Barney. And I used to work in the fixed income area. And I hated the work I did. And I did not particularly care for the people. And all my siblings have PhDs, and I really liked the way it teaches you a way to approach problems. So it's sort of a way of thinking, which I think is fairly helpful. But so at this point, I work on problems I care about, I work on topics I care about, I work with people I really like, and I work with students I generally like. I like most of the students I work with. So given how much of my time is spent at work, it was really important to me to be, and it varies from people to people, right? For some people it's important that the work environment is a fun environment. For others, it doesn't matter. So that's something that you have to decide.
What time period did you work on Wall Street?
I was there 96 to 99. So right before the tech bubble burst. So I was in public finance. We did a lot of, public finance is basically issuing bonds or raising money for state and local governments, a lot of, so sometimes things like McDonald's might raise money in that market. So we were the leading investment bankers at that point, and we did the first $1 billion deal. We raised the corporate, public debt. So it seems glamorous on the outside, but it's not. I mean, for me, it was just plain boring. Long answer to a really short question.
So I was in public accounting, and I really liked public accounting. I liked the people I worked with.
Whoa!
And so I wasn't just desperate to get out by any means. But I was in public accounting at the same time that Enron was, having its issues, and Anderson was having its issues. I was in a different firm, but all of a sudden, we have a big five firm that is no more all of a sudden, and all these auditors and tax people and partners were sort of scrambling to go other places, and public companies were scrambling to find new auditors, and so I was at a point in my career where there was a lot of uncertainty within the profession. Becoming a partner and living with the stress and all that sort of thing seemed a little bit less appealing than it did before, because of new apparent risk. And I was a long way from partner anyway. And so I was at a point where I felt like, okay, I need to sort of maybe commit to this career for another number of years, or maybe do something else. At the same time, my GMAT score, which was one that I didn't want to try to replicate, was going to expire, so... No,
719.
But anyway, so my GMAT score was going to expire, and I didn't want to take it anymore. And so I had this idea that maybe I could do something else. About the same time, I was here recruiting for Ernst & Young, and I was talking with Dr. Stocks, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about a PhD? Turns out I had thought about it some. I said, I was thinking about getting a PhD in econ. And he said, oh yeah, that'd be great if you don't want to make any money. And he said, if you want to actually be able to survive on your salary, you should think about accounting. So I did.
I can blame more Stocks also really for the initial step. Like I said, I was plant accounting manager for BorgWarner, and they were talking at that time about moving me into corporate internal audit, but I was living in Oxford, obviously at the time, and was happy and content with my job, and Morris, who has observed that I'm local at that point, you know, calls me up one day and says, how do you feel about teaching? And I'm like, well, that's how I said it. I said, I'm too busy, and we gotta close the month, and blah, 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 blah. And he says, well, that's good, because I put you on the schedule for Tuesday, Thursday at 5 p.m. And so I started teaching, taught for a year and a half. I mentioned that this is my second appointment here. That was actually my first. And that's really when I fell in love with it. And the opportunity to work with my dissertation chair, Michael Bamber at Georgia, who is kind of a legend in our field, was kind of the moment, you know, when I decided that I was gonna move to Athens and start my academic career, and that's what brought me here.
So mine is a little bit backwards. I spent 13 years working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car in an administrative position there while my husband was in the military. And when he needed to move to Georgia, got stationed there, I couldn't keep the job. There was not an office, an administration office in Georgia. So I had to resign and look for a job without a degree. And I had dabbled a little bit in accounting at Enterprise. You had to have a degree to be an accountant there, so I only was a helper. And so when I decided that I needed to go back to school and get a college degree, I went with accounting and did better than I thought I would. Liked the content. Continued on and got my master's, and when I was in my master's program, one of my tax professors brought the idea of a PhD to me, and I was like, I can't do that. So she kind of put the idea in my head. My goal was to graduate with my master's and be work in managerial accounting. I did not want anything to do with public accounting, but it was the fastest way to my CPA, which also wasn't on my list of things to do when I first went back to school. So I got my master's, and I was like, hey, let me go ahead and get my CPA. So I did that, and I needed the year of experience, and I just needed a year. So I went to work in public accounting, knowing I was not staying there. I was just there for the experience. In that time frame, I was allowed to teach Accounting 202, the introductory managerial accounting at BSU, which made me fall in love with that half of the PhD career. Loved it, loved the kids. They felt like my own kids. And so I knew that part of it I liked, and I just needed to get on board with the research half of it. So, and I'm not sure I'm entirely on board there. I'm still figuring my way, but that's what led me. So as soon as I got my CPA, or it was coming, applications were going out, and here I am.
Okay, so this is kind of a couple of questions in one here. I think it'll probably be a little easier. And I'll let you start out on this one, Tina, since you're freshest at this. So how long does it take to earn your PhD? And then so far, like, what are your favorite parts, like your least favorite parts? And then why did you decide to come to Ole Miss? And then kind of why did y'all decide on PhD first?
All right, so first, why Ole Miss? It was after 9 applications. It was either Ole Miss or 2 schools in Southern Florida. Ole Miss was definitely the better, I'm not going to, prestigious isn't the right word, but higher ranked school. It was a better fit as far as when you're doing research, you kind of have all these different choices, and the faculty here do research in a lot of different areas, so you are open to more than just one type of research, which was a plus coming here versus at least one of the other schools was one kind of research. And then the cost of living in South Florida is stupid ridiculous. So that was a plus coming here also. So that's Ole Miss, without a doubt, was hands down easy choice there. How long? I think it's supposed to take 4 to 5 years. I'm not done yet. I think some people have taken longer than that. From what I can tell, 5 years is about the norm, and that's kind of what I'm shooting for.
Favorite part right now?
And favorite part. I mean, I was instructed on what to say here, but, oh, gee,
You did do a good job of instructing her. She's now.
okay, so one of the things that got me into staying in academics was that I like the environment of school. I like the learning process. I'm one of those weird people that still likes taking classes. So I'm in that environment, and it's even better now because my instructors are more, I'm not gonna say friends, but I'm able to talk to them more than if they were just, one of those professors that I can't, talk to. I don't know, I feel like I'm part of a group here, even though I'm just in the PhD program, I'm still a peon. So, none of the work is fun, so I'm not gonna say any of that is fun. The reading, some of it can be interesting, there's a lot of it, so, but it can be interesting. And I can do it for the most part on my own time, which is the best thing, like it's not 8 to 5, or 8 to 8 in public accounting. I don't know.
So what's the class structure like? Do you like go to class, like will you go to class, or?
We do. We have 3 classes a semester for the most part. One of them is, I think, going to always be a stats class for the most part, which is unfortunate. And then one of them is a seminar where we read a lot and learn a lot about different types of research in accounting, whether it's like experimental research or archival research and kind of like auditing, financial, stuff like that. And the third class, I don't know. I think that one kind of varies depending on your minor and your minor, so that one can vary. But it is three classes a semester for 2 to 2.5 years.
May I comment on the statistics part? So we all take a lot of statistics courses. A fair lot. But if you're doing data analytics, one, you will have a head start going in. You already sort of know what to think about when you're looking at, why are you using these statistical tools? But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So at some point, I hate to say this, but you almost start thinking in those. So it's like learning a new language, right? When you start, it's a lot of effort. You have to translate things in your head, and then sometimes you still get it wrong. But the more you use it, the more comfortable you get. And so I'm not saying it's not challenging, but you see the benefits of it, and it just comes easier.
It does.
Right?
It does. It does.
It's sort of, sorry.
Is that requirement or practice of doing the 2 years of statistics something particular to the way that Ole Miss does, doctor, or is that pretty standard across the country?
And so it's not just 2 years of econometrics and statistics. That's a big part of it. That's one of the tools you need to do research. But it's also 2 years of learning about theory. So, if you might take a lot of finance classes or econ classes or management, psychology, all sorts of stuff that can help you to develop theory about how things are likely to work, say in the audit setting or the financial accounting setting. And then they also take, students, all of us have or are taking courses in accounting research methods. And so it's not just the statistics, but our program is more or less consistent with other programs. I mean, most programs are going to be pretty consistent in kind of the core requirements. I mean, ours is a little bit different in some ways, and other programs will be a little bit different in other ways. But the core, hey, you're going to take a lot of econometrics and statistics kind of courses. That's going to be pretty consistent. And then you're going to take a lot of courses that will help you develop and understand theories that will help you make predictions in your research. Every is going to do that. Now, they might be different depending on your area of interest, but the basic structure of the programs are largely consistent across all.
And we would be doing you a disservice if we did not teach you stats. If you're going to do research, we would be cheating you, because there is, I can't even field studies, like if you're gonna go out and do survey, you need to know stats to be able to tell what your results mean. So there is no way that you can do research without understanding statistics. So it would not be in your interest to not take the statistics classes.
So I think it'd be helpful to kind of take a step back and just so everybody knows that the purpose of a PhD program in accounting and real engineering isn't to make you a better accountant. Okay, so you're not going to take classes learning, memorizing the FASB standards and stuff like that. The purpose of a PhD is to teach you how to do academic research, and not research in the standards and that sort of thing, but research about the standards, or research about how accounting is used, research about how auditors influence the flow of information and the degree to which people trust information and that sort of thing. So the PhD is about learning how to do that research. And
Can you talk a little bit about your auditor rotation paper so that we get an idea of what the kinds of things, maybe?
okay, so several years ago, the PCOB decided, and other people before, decided that maybe it would be a good idea if audit firms had to, or if public companies had to rotate their audit firms periodically every 5 years or 10 years. And the idea was that that would make the audit firms more independent and less financially bound and economically bound to their clients. And so, but that it wasn't clear that that would be the case. I mean, one of the things that could be lost in that is, knowledge about your client, and the new auditor has to learn everything from scratch again and that sort of thing. And so, a couple of my co-authors and I did an experiment where we, I don't want to get into the weeds of this, but anyway, we explored in the laboratory in an experiment with people how rotating auditor and client pairs would influence the degree to which the auditor trusts the manager. And what we found was it depended on some other circumstances, but we were able to test and explore the potential impact of this very practical problem from reality. We were able to explore that academically and to provide some insights to standard setters that they could use in building better standards.
So that's the kind of stuff. Jeremy has a really interesting paper too on audit. Your job paper.
Fundamentally, what we're trying to do here, the statistics is explaining what we've found within our studies. But as you know, accounting per se is not a science. Accounting is applied. So the way that we do our research, which is aimed at finding the truth, we're trying to, under positive accounting theory, we're trying to describe the truth of what's going on with accounting information. And so we have to borrow really theories from other fields. Primarily, those two fields are economics, which is like where Dr. Prakash's research would draw theory from, versus psychology, which is where Dr. Boland and I would draw more of our theories from. I guess my view of how we do research is, accounting is, to me, essentially, it's an utterly human process. It's all about human beings, flawed human beings.
Speak for yourself.
Right. Generating and disseminating information for the use of other flawed human beings, and in between being audited by flawed human beings. So I guess I bristle at research that sort of is like there's some cosmic right answer to, oh no, depreciation shouldn't always be straight line or something like that. It is information that's being communicated from one set of people to another, and it's more important that both sides sort of understand what the expectations are, if that makes sense. And that's why, important theories from psychology can tell us a lot about how people are going to behave in accounting settings, whether they're generating the information, auditing the information, or trying to use the information to make decisions. So that's kind of how I view the world. In terms of how I chose a PhD program, I really looked at programs where there were specific people on the faculty who did the kind of work that I'm interested in, which is experimental research, which means you're typically using theories from psychology and doing laboratory experiments on real people in the domain of auditing. It so happened that Georgia had somebody who is well established in that field. Then, as Tina said, we've sort of got a diverse set of interests here at Ole Miss. At Georgia, we also have that advantage in terms of having a lot of people doing a lot of different things, which kind of gives you some flexibility. If you change your mind after a couple of years, maybe you can pursue a different path. How we're evaluated, I mean, really whether faculty are promoted and are allowed to stay here is determined by the quality of the research. Excellent teaching that's a maintained expectation. You have to do quality research with the goal of creating new knowledge, having that work published so that people can see it, which burnishes the reputation of the university. That's really the center of gravity in terms of what we do. Research is the primary determinant of our external reputation and as a consequence of the whole university. So that's really how we're being looked at.
All of y'all have degrees from different schools. How important is that, and maybe why? Because I've heard that. How important is that going into accounting as an industry and also teaching? I've heard that you try to get degrees from different schools to kind of diversify where you're from. So
I'll jump on that even though I've been talking for a while. The idea behind that is, again, since the camera's rolling, I shouldn't use the word inbreeding, but basically, if you're going to create new knowledge, you don't want to sit in the same place and learn from the same people in the same way that's always been done. It's kind of like the more you sort of expand out, sort of see things at this point, I've been PhD student or faculty at 3 different universities, and I think I've taken a lot of education from that process in terms of different ways that people do things and so forth. I see the advantages of having traveled about a bit, but some schools will hire their own, but the idea behind it is to make sure that the bloodlines are well diversified, if you want to think of it that way. That's why you see all these different schools on our visas.
And so typically, schools are not going to hire faculty from their own PhD program. At least they're usually going to make those people go out. If they're really, really good, after 5 or 6 or 7 years, they might hire them back in. So if you, for example, wanted to be on the faculty at Ole Miss, you would not want to come to Ole Miss PhD program. You want to go somewhere else and give yourself a chance to get a job here if that's what you want. Usually, I think what's going to happen is you're going to go somewhere else and you're going to see all the opportunities, and you might want to come back to Ole Miss, maybe, depending on what your research interests are and what your potential is, or you might want to go somewhere else. And so you went somewhere else first time around, and then finally came back to promised land.
Yeah, have you guys ever been really close to falling out of love with research and going back professional?
Yeah, so it's tough.
Like, how do you make that decision?
Well, so here's something I don't think any of us, I'll speak for the 3 of us, I'm not so sure about Tina, since she's just now getting into it, but my guess is none of the 3 of us I know personally have never considered leaving this to go back to work.
A bad day in this job is better than a good day doing most anything else. And that goes, whether it's public accounting or whatever, I love my job. I mean, this is the best job I've ever had. I make less money than most of the people I consider my peers, but I think I'm happier. I love going to work every day.
That said, the research process is a very difficult process. And then so, and I think we can all probably say the same thing, it takes a long time to start a research project and then to see it in print. Just as an example, I'm still working on a paper with one of our former doctoral students and a faculty member at the University of Virginia. And we've been working on this paper. I was going through my email, deleting some old stuff the other day, and I saw the earliest email that I had related to this project was from 2011, and this paper is still unpublished. Okay, it's under submission at a good journal, but it's still unpublished, and so it's a very long process. In a lot of cases, it's a very long process, and you face tons of criticism at every step along the way, and it takes a lot of perseverance and hard work and dedication. In fact, Jeremy and I have a paper together with a faculty member from Georgia, and this paper has recently been accepted for publication.
You guys weren't born when we started. Like 2009 or something.
Yeah, so this was now it went on vacation.
The paper is true, and I mean, that's the beautiful thing about research is the paper is true, and that's really what gives you the perseverance to stick with it, is you know, how many times you hear me say that this paper is about say on pay, and whether letting the investors comment on executive pay packages, how it affects things, but I've always believed in the paper, and Kendall and our other co-authors do as well. And that's really what provided the energy to keep us, you know, coming back for more and more meetings, although the paper is now accepted, so I think we're down to the last meeting or two.
So, sorry.
Congratulations.
So research is not for somebody who has no patience, but you get a lot of feedback along the way, so you should be willing. I have seen people present in front of an audience and somebody in the audience goes, yeah, that's just wrong, right? And you have to have the confidence to just keep going. But at the end of the day, so you figure out how to make it work. So don't work on a question you don't believe in, right? Because you're going to be stuck with it 4 years, 5 years. So as Jeremy was saying, this is something he believes in, the papers he worked on. And we get to choose what we work on, right? I work on things that I find interesting. And I know that I'm going to be looking at it for a large part of my life. I better be interested in it. So that I work with people I like. So, I'm working on a paper with these guys. And it just, if you're having a bad day, one of your co-authors is going to go, oh, come on, we can deal with this way. So it seems, so you will get impatient occasionally, but a bad day here is better than a good day at most other places. Question?
Dr. Prakash, this one's specifically for you. So can you tell us a little bit about the transition from India to the United States, kind of work-wise, difference in office cultures, and then as a follow-up, what advice would you give to somebody who 5 or 10 years from now might want to do an international rotation with a firm or whoever they're working for?
So culturally, things used to be really different, but I think those differences are now getting smaller. And the transition wasn't particularly hard for me, but again, it's a personal thing. If you like checking out new things, you will enjoy yourself. If you hate new situations, you're going to hate something like that. The one thing I will remember, so when firms come here, audit firms come here to recruit, a lot of times they will invite faculty out to lunch, so you will have lunch with a couple of partners from the firm or whatever. So do you remember we had the national partner from KPMG? I feel like it was a Beta Alpha Psi that he was here for. And he was talking about how, for him, one of the best learning experiences, so I said something like, what advice would you give our student who was starting out in a career at KPMG, or I forget, it was one of the big four. And he said for him, the most helpful thing had been his international rotation. And I forget where he had, but he'd done a few of them. Is this ringing a bell for you guys at all? I wish I could remember more concretely, but apparently that is experience that is valued by the firms, especially as you move up the ladder. And we have, I mean, Deloitte, we have our students go all over the world at this point, depending on where they want to work. Did I answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So in terms of the, like, intention behind getting a PhD, it seems like the master's program is a lot, like, I mean, a lot of people do 250 hours, but it's like kind of an additional accreditation that a lot of people tend to use on the industry side. Is the PhD ever something that, like, is used as leverage on the industry side job? Or is it really something where, like, once you're in the PhD, you're kind of on a, like, straight and narrow path to, like, academia and doing research? And then on that note, is there kind of a healthy rotation of job openings within within academia, and how do you kind of go about, like, searching for the best opportunity once you finish your PhD?
So the job prospects for PhDs in accounting are really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
Underline the really.
So there are a lot of jobs available. Depending, it can be better or worse depending on the year. So it's a relatively small world, and so supply and demand really does kind of show up. And so some years, if you're getting a PhD and your focus is behavioral research and accounting, there has to be someone out there looking for that kind of person. And there will be some, but if there are 5 of you and 4 job openings looking for that, it can be a little bit tougher. But in a lot of years, there might be 5 of you and 15 job openings. And then it's tough for the schools to find the people they want. In the last couple of years, we've hired a number of people. And we've looked for tax people and systems people. And it was very hard for us to find good tax people. And it was extremely hard for us to find good systems people. And so we in at least the first year that we were looking, we failed to find somebody to fill the systems faculty line. And we had to go back and do it again the next year to hire somebody. Fortunately, we were able to. So the job prospects are really good. When you're in the doctoral program, as you're approaching the end, you'll go out on the market, which is what we say. And so the market, so schools start advertising their job openings in the fall, and then they'll begin to interview people, some in the fall, some wait until the winter. And so you'll apply to those schools. There's a big conference in the fall where all the PhD students, or most of the PhD students who are on the market, will go to that conference, and they'll present for just a few minutes on their dissertation for a few minutes, and then they'll potentially interview with some schools and kind of get matched up a little bit. But eventually they'll go and be invited to come and visit some schools that are interested in them. And they'll go and they'll spend a couple days, at least one full day and overnight, or a couple of nights, and they'll just have meetings with faculty all day for 30 minutes at a time. And then at some point during the day, they'll do an hour-and-a-half presentation of their dissertation, which for most people is the most interesting part, because it's when we go to other schools and do presentations of our research, we get up and we have a PowerPoint slide deck, and we start presenting, and immediately hands go up and people start asking questions, and it's just nonstop kind of rapid fire questions, and you're always your people are pushing back on your research and poking holes in it and trying to ask questions, or question what you did, and you're defending it the whole time. So anyway, you'll do a presentation like that, and then eventually schools will make you an offer. Typically in accounting, the salaries for accounting faculty, starting salaries for accounting faculty are higher than almost any other field on average. Finance is up there and maybe some engineering. But just as an example, a few years ago, one of our students got a job at the University of Wisconsin. His 9-month salary, starting salary was $205,000. And then he made 22% of that on top for the summer.
So add another, what, 50,000 or something, yeah.
And so, you know, that's not big for partner money, but,
It was a master's.
So,
On the first part of your question about jumping back and forth between the academy and the profession, that doesn't really happen as much in accounting as you've probably seen it happen with, engineering or medicine or law or something like that. You see professors do things like do training programs and consult on things, or kind of be a gun for hire for like expert witness litigation type stuff, like they get paid for things like that. But in terms of professors actually jumping over to work for the firms back and forth, we just don't, that doesn't seem to happen very much. I mean, we have a very high degree of interaction with external constituents because they hire our students. I mean, and that's what makes our discipline different than lots of other professors you see walking around campuses, is we're very tied into the outcome side of where our students go. And we're getting, we've got close relationships with our alums because of that, but, we do have a lot of contact with industry. These firms, probably much more so than other academics, but in terms of there being some kind of revolving door, they're basically not a door. We interact with them all the time, but there isn't a lot of employment jumping back and forth.
so the closest if you wanted to put yourself in that situation, the closest you come to that is most of the regulators, the PCAOB does fellowships. So you can take a leave of a year from the school you're teaching in and go do a research fellowship at PCAOB. SEC does that. FASB actually has changed what they used to do, but almost all these standard setting regulator sort of bodies have a process in place where they invite academics to come visit them for a year, 2 years, and work with them. So you get some exposure to what is going on in the industry. The second thing I wanted, so you had asked about job prospects after a PhD program. So to give you an idea of where we are placing our students, so our placement sort of ranges, and it's what the student wants, right? So we can guide them, but at the end of the day, it's the student's call. So we have a student who really, he likes research, but what he really wants to do is go to a teaching school, so go teach. So we place students at Mississippi State, and since the time I've been here. One of our current students is going to Baylor now. She's going to work as a faculty at Baylor, University of Wisconsin, Bentley, so Cincinnati, yeah. So we're placing I think we are placing our students really well.
So you said a student wanted to go to a teaching university. Are there universities that focus more on the teaching aspect than research?
Absolutely.
And maybe how does that work?
So every school sort of decide where they want to be, right? So I want to be primarily a teaching school. I want somebody who's going to be really good. So all schools, even if it's a research school, requires sort of this idea of you're going to be good at teaching, right? But there are schools where teaching is a smaller portion of your evaluation. So the most important thing is research. But then there are schools which emphasize teaching way more than research. And you figure out, so it has happened frequently that we have students coming in saying, oh, I really like teaching and that's what I want to do. But they've never seen any research, and then they start doing research and they go, wow, this is interesting. Maybe I want a school where I can do both of them. So I would think of us as a research and teaching school, right? So,
One of the barometers you kind of look at is contractually how much they expect a faculty member to teach per year. So like the gold standard right now for a tenure track faculty appointment around the country would be like a 3.0, which means you teach 3 sections and hopefully you teach 3 sections of one class, and then the other semester you strictly research. So basically you're teaching a semester research and then whatever you work out for summer money. And as that load really kind of, you see people like for a hardcore teaching school for offers, it might be like a 4-4 or something like that. So you're going to be teaching 4 classes a semester. We're going to have a lot harder time producing research at a school like that. So the contracting sort of reveals to you where the priorities are.
Where are we at on that spectrum?
we want excellence in everything.
Our faculty, we have done, I'm proud of our record for producing premier journal hits. We actually, on the continuum, I think we teach a lot for the amount of research success that we have.
So our standard teaching load is at 2-2. So most of our faculty are teaching 2 courses each semester, but sometimes we teach a little bit more depending on the needs and what the dean tells us. But our research expectations are still pretty high.
I know.
Good.
I'll let you know, then we'll come back. Then, yeah.
This is just a very general question, seeing that all of you guys come from different backgrounds. Where would you say that accounting, what's one of the more interesting places that you've seen that accounting has taken you, whether that be public accounting or education? What would be one of the more interesting places that you would say you've
Right
seen
here.
yourself? Right here?
Yeah. Profound question, I don't know.
I'd say when I started as an undergraduate student in Ole Miss and even as a master's student in accounting, I had no idea that I would be sitting here at this point. And so Rashna said it. I mean, I think right here is kind of the most interesting thing. But public accounting, of course, takes you all over the place, and you see a lot of interesting stuff, which is part of what I like so much about public accounting is the different businesses, the different cities, the different facilities that you can see. I found that to be very interesting.
And I think that gives you, if you in future decide you want to go into academia, that gives you a starting point for asking interesting questions. If you've never worked, you can't necessarily identify what might be of interest to the profession or what might be of interest to your colleagues. It's much harder to do that, and so if you've worked, you have some sort of an idea of that. And I mean, it's so being here is really fun, and I've been at different schools. Again, it's a matter of taste and preference. I like working with Dr. Shaw, although he's trying to get me to eat meat. I'm vegetarian, and so we have But, we go and present our research at different schools. And I've presented my research at the SEC, I've presented a paper to the PCAOB, and that's interesting and different. But then I go to a university and present my research, and that's different. So it's a spectrum of experiences is the way I look at it.
Okay. Oh, we have some questions here. I'll come back down here in the back of the bin.
I was just curious about the advancement structure. Like, I know that you said for a while you were an adjunct professor, and I know there's like assistant professors. Like, how does like the tenureship work and like the reevaluation structure? And like, how does the responsibility change as you?
So starting out, there's a tenure track and non-tenure. And most of this is observable to the students. And frankly, it doesn't really matter to most folks, unless you are a faculty member. There's tenure track and non-tenure track. Tenure track people at most schools are evaluated after they've been at the school for after 3 years, and then they go up for tenure after 6 years, and your whole record is looked at, which are teaching, research, and service. The big determinant for most people is probably the research portion of that portfolio, because service, which is things like this, it's weighted a little bit less. Assistant professors are usually shielded more for that earlier, so they can put more time into research. Here, we actually do a review every year. So you have 5 annual reviews, and then the 6th year, you go up for tenure. So in terms of understanding the ranks, on the tenure track, it goes from assistant professor, then when you're given tenure, it becomes associate professor, then associate professor. Even after you have tenure, there's another promotion. You be promoted to professor, which is a full professor, and then a lot of times you see chairs like Dr. Barr's KPG chair, Dr. Bowen is the Cray chair of accounting, which means there's an endowed, allotment of endowment donations that are accredited to that chair. So,
If you take my governmental class, we will talk about this. I promise you that. You do? Thank you. I was going to ask Devin if he remembers, since he's in my class right now. Good.
When you say people are like reviewing, you get the review, like who you're reviewing it?
Dr.
Water, okay.
Yeah, all tenured faculty have input, but it's ultimately, we're a unique situation because we're standalone school of accountancy, so we have a high degree of contact with our dean, and he's the one who sort of delivers the annual review.
So the faculty, the tenured faculty will meet every spring and evaluate the untenured faculty. And will make a recommendation to the dean who will deliver the evaluation to the faculty. When you've been around for about 6 years, you go up for tenure, and the same kind of thing happens. But in that case, you kind of do the same sort of evaluation, but then the tenured faculty vote to either recommend or not recommend you for tenure and promotion. Then the dean will make a separate recommendation for tenure and or promotion. And then it goes, and so this process will take almost a year. Prashna knows all about it.
Goes to Dr. Prakash is our recently tenured
It's good. So now I'm staying here is what that means.
Eventually, the provost will make a decision. The chancellor will sort of ratify that decision, and then eventually the IHL will put their rubber stamp on it as well. Over a long, stressful year.
Sean?
How many weeks on average, how many hours a week on average do you spend doing research, and does that vary seasonally? And then also during the summer, are you required to teach or do research?
So I think the amount of time that each person spends on research is going to be different, and it's probably going to differ from week to week. So I gave an exam a couple weeks ago, and then finally got around to grading it a few days ago. And so in that time frame, I'm spending all my time grading exams and doing research. So yeah, I think it changes during different parts of the semester. On average, so I think that the expectation here, if you talk to people around the university and in the Lyceum, the split is more or less expected to be about 40% research, 40% teaching, and 10% service. But the number of hours that go into that total pool can go anywhere. Some weeks from maybe a very small number, depending on the time of the year, up to as much as you would work in public accounting.
So the reason Dr. Bolden said 40, 40, and 10, that missing 10 is hanging out in your colleagues' offices. Which clarify that, because it may look like you're just having a conversation, but a lot of times you're actually talking research and you don't even realize that. So the paper that the 3 of us are working on came out of just hanging out in other people's offices. So that 10 is sort of that flexible, I'm gonna go bug somebody time. That's actually intrinsically research time.
So during the summer, do you have to do research or teach?
Yes.
If you want to get paid.
No, but research you're doing either, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not off time, right? It's not, oh, yeah, she's on vacation for 3 months or however long you want. I mean, there are schools like Columbia, you teach 7 weeks of the year. So it's not like you're just off for the remaining
45.
45 weeks. Sorry?
I said 45. I was
45. I was thinking, do I put that flex factor in there or not? That's what I was thinking.
So, yeah, so most of us, at least those of us that have been around a while, will teach in the summer, just not for any reason other really than our courses need to be taught. We have a lot of students and the courses need to be taught, and so we need to teach them. At other schools where they have maybe fewer students and more faculty, they don't need courses taught in the summer, and so those faculty will spend the entire summer working on research. And so my compensation for the summer is based partly on the one course that I teach in June, and then in July, the dean provides me with additional compensation so that I can do research during that period of time. But at the same time, we're doing research all the time, and we're working on teaching all the time. So in July, when I'm not teaching a course, I'm getting ready to teach in the fall. In June, when I am teaching that course, I'm still having conversations with co-authors, I'm still working on papers, still generating ideas. And so you're doing all of it kind of all the time, and it's all mixed up together. And in fact, the teaching, I probably get more research ideas preparing for class than anything else.
And if you have good students, the better your research will be. I've learned that. That's one important thing, that you need to go to a school like this place where there are good students, where people are going to say things in class that are going to kind of get the wheels spinning, so that you're always being productive on all fronts, as opposed to like changing gears to go from research to teaching. Good students help.
And we work with our PhD students on research. So the effort is to get them started thinking about research early in the process. So a lot of times we end up with them being co-authors on a paper with us.
Say another thing about being a doctoral student. Being a doctoral student is different from being an undergraduate student for sure, and even a master's student. And so I personally view doctoral students as colleagues, and in a very short period of time, they will officially be colleagues. And so if you go into a doctoral program, I think you want to go into a program where the doctoral students are treated like colleagues. And I mean, organizationally, they're not on the same level as the faculty, and they don't, do the same stuff that faculty do. But they can be treated in conversation and in the social structure of the department as if, as colleagues, and that's the way it should be. And so the relationship between doctoral students and faculty is very different, and I would say much closer than typical of relationships between faculty and undergrads and even master's students. And so the doctoral students, we go to lunch almost every day, and a lot of the doctoral students go to lunch with us. And
Not because we force them to. They want to go to lunch with us. Well, okay, they pretend like they want to go to lunch.
And he's absolutely right, and that's kind of what I was getting at before with the relationship. But it also, I think, serves to say that it's not that way at every school,
That's
at
true.
every PhD program either.
That's
So when if you're going and looking for schools and you're talking, you want to talk to the students there and get their feedback on what kind of relationship they have with each other, because some of them are very competitive, and what they have with the faculty there too. It is great here, but it's not great at every PhD program. So.
you need the other PhD students.
Yes.
Yes.
And you need to be able to get along and enjoy being around them. If you don't, it makes it a longer and lonelier 5 years.
Okay, so we are about to wrap it up, but just thank y'all so much for coming. And then my last question for y'all is, if you had to just give one little tidbit of advice for someone who's like just slightly considering a career in academics, what would it be?
Do it.
That's what I was gonna say, do it. Get some work experience under your belt, then you will appreciate this more as well. And then you know,
Talk to your professors about what we've talked to more in depth to get a better idea of what that kind of life looks like later. And if that's a fit for you, like, you guys have relationships with your professors. Talk to them.
If you have it, even if you're not thinking about a PhD program, if you have not taken the GMAT yet for the master's program, put effort into preparing for the GMAT. And so you're gonna have to take the GMAT to get into a doctoral program. And the higher your score, the better school you can get into and the better job you can get on the back end.
he knows what he's talking about. He had a really high GMAT score. Taller than me.
Then,
So,
Okay, thank y'all so much.
now, how many of you are gonna go into a PhD program?
Okay, Catherine has a little gift for y'all. Wait. If you have not gone and done the poll, like, go do it right now. Officer applications are out and Deloitte next Tuesday. Thank y'all for